While rewatching some Up Is Not Jump videos about my favourite games, Fallout 3 and New Vegas, he brought up some interesting criticisms about Fallout 3's open world map and found remedies for these issues in New Vegas's open world map. I'll play the New Vegas clip as it fairly concisely covers the issues.
In Fallout 3, you exit into the wasteland ready to continue the incredibly important task of tracking down your missing father. And sure, you should probably go and look for him, but from the moment the game gets going, the importance of this task melts away and you inevitably get distracted and wander off. And I think the game encourages this attitude a little bit, made clear by the fact that you start off basically in the middle of the map.
Now this freedom is what initially drew me to Fallout 3. But as with Fallout 3 and many other games like it, I found that being able to go anywhere at any time makes it impossible for the game to really have a well-paced story.
See, what Fallout New Vegas does, especially early on, is it gives you the freedom to explore a decent portion of the general area you're in, as you'd expect from these kind of games. But when you start to roam too far from the route you need to take to do the main story, it puts an organic difficulty block in the way. What most games would do to control your movements is put a giant impassable mountain or a locked door in your way. In this game though, you can go north to New Vegas right away if you want, but you have to be very good at the game.
Now, I like the story and world of both games. Fallout 3 was the first video game I enjoyed playing, getting me invested not just in Fallout, but in video games entirely. Fallout New Vegas took this further, with its incredible writing and setting. But Up Is Not Jump's criticisms got me wondering, what makes a story fit well into its world? And what does good level design look like? To answer these questions, I bought this book, Slay the Dragon, in order to learn more about game writing. This book had a dedicated chapter on level design, and initially I was hesitant as to how relevant it would be. After all, open worlds and level design aren't the same thing, right? But I read the chapter and made a checklist of key features that good narrative-focused level designs have. But I wanted to remain objective by analysing a non-Fallout game. So I needed a game with an open world, survival element, and a story that could be followed from one point to the next. And that was when I remembered Subnautica. I have played Subnautica before, back when it full released on Xbox in 2018. Subnautica was also an incredibly successful game, making it worthy of analysis. So I decided to return to Planet 4546b to see if Subnautica, and open world games in general, held up to what this book was saying, and what I discovered was absolutely magical. This video will be split into the following chapters: what are levels, what is level design and what are its key features, how do level design and narrative design interact with each other, an analysis and breakdown of my Subnautica playthrough, what Subnautica gets right and wrong, and conclusion. What are levels, what is level design and what are its key features? So, to start, what are levels? Slay the Dragon provides a really good definition for what a level is, so I'm going to quote it directly. A level is a contained environment where the player/protagonist must achieve a goal or series of goals in order to continue with the story or game and advance to the next level. When reading this, I was surprised that it didn't include something along the lines of separated by loading screens in order to differentiate levels from open worlds. This means that by definition, this and this are both levels, as Subnautica's biomes are contained to distinct areas. What is level design? Level design is the part of game design where the physical game space is constructed. Level designers will work closely with the writing, lighting, and sound design teams in order to give the level the correct feeling and ambience. What are the key features of good levels and level design? It is a challenging process to get the level, story, sound, and lighting aligned, and sometimes ideas or even whole levels have to be scrapped as they either don't work or don't fit into the world that's being created. Subnautica's developers, Unknown Worlds, have their own version of scrapping work when they decided to move away from a procedurally generated world to a handcrafted one.
A lot of the biomes have a lot of really gorgeous, detailed, evocative concept art. You get a lot to work from. I mean, that's one of the reasons we shifted away from procedural generation to a hand-sculpted world, is that we wanted to match these wonderful concepts and get that in game.
According to Slay the Dragon, the key features of good level design are: levels should start small and get bigger and bigger, There should be a goal, a complication, and a resolution. Levels need to move the story forward. Levels can have multiple or mini goals. Levels should have a boss. Players should be able to get into the action of gameplay as soon as possible. Levels should increase player agency. Levels should enhance the player in some way, i.e. learn a new skill, enhance an existing skill, get new equipment, or learn a secret about the world. Levels should have turning points and/or foreshadowing. How do level design and narrative design interact with each other? Levels in a game are there as a stage to help tell a story, whether it's a young post-apocalyptic vault dweller trying to find their father, an outlaw trying to keep those he cares about safe during the ending years of the Wild West, or the lone survivor of an interstellar corporation's crashed ship. Or, if you'd prefer a non-game comparison, levels are like the chapters of a book or the acts in a movie. Simply put, level design is tied to narrative design. The two cannot exist apart. Analysis and breakdown of my Subnautica playthrough. Before beginning, I want to point out two things. First, it's been at least 5 years since I last played Subnautica, and second, I'm focusing on how the stories and levels interact, so I'm allowing the story to guide me rather than trying to rush tech and upgrades. Starting the game, I crash land in the safe shallows. The life pod is damaged with no radio or secondary systems. The radio is important in order to begin and progress the primary storyline, which is about finding survivors and escaping Planet 4546b. So the first thing I did was search for the necessary components to build the repair tool. This leads me to an encounter with the boss of the safe shallows, the crashfish. These fish make their nests on top of sulfur deposits, and getting too close made them attack me. At the start of the game, I am not fast enough to escape the crashfish and their attacks. A lot of the early game predators won't be bosses in a traditional sense, but will still provide a significant threat due to the lack of offensive capabilities. After being blown up and then taking the sulfur, I'm forced to move to the next level, the kelp forest. The kelp forest are home to the creepvine kelp, the seeds of which are used to produce silicone rubber. This introduces me to the boss of this level, stalkers. These creatures are territorial, but can be countered early by the player if they drop chunks of metal salvage, which the stalkers will then play with. With all the necessary components in hand, I return to the life pod, build the repair tool, and fix the damaged radio, beginning the primary storyline. After fixing the radio, I build the scanner in order to begin salvaging useful technology from the wreckages of the Aurora. While searching for useful tech, I find a wreck in the safe shallows and search it. Inside, I find an abandoned PDA which contains the Degassi Crew Manifest Paul Torgal entry. This indirectly begins the Degassi storyline. The Degassi storyline is about the disappearance of the Degassi, a ship owned by the Torgal Corporation in which its owner, Paul Torgal, his son Bart Torgal, and a mercenary, Marguerite Mader, went missing near Planet 4546b several years ago. One of the Aurora's reasons for being near 4546b was to search for the Degassi. Not long after this, I get my first radio message and listen to it.
This is LifePod 3, uploading our coordinates.
With my first solid lead on other survivors, I decide to head straight to LifePod 3. An observation I'd like to make is that LifePod 3's message specifically mentions the Sea Glide. This makes LifePod 3 useful for anyone who has been struggling to find the Sea Glide fragments. I journey to LifePod 3 and pass through another kelp forest biome. This is where Subnautica shows it contains the first feature of good level design. The first three biomes, the safe shallows, kelp forests, and grassy plateaus, are broken up and intermingled with each other, creating several small biomes within the starting area. I reach LifePod 3 and find it damaged and abandoned with a PDA and a data box containing the compass blueprint. This makes LifePod 3 useful for players even if they have managed to find all the Sea Glide fragments, as the compass is extremely useful for improving navigation accuracy. Whilst going to LifePod 3, I received another message, this time from Ozzy from the cafeteria, who escaped on LifePod 17. LifePod 17 landed in the grassy plateau, which has an average depth of around 100 meters. This means that oxygen management becomes a real issue. This biome's aggressive fauna is limited to the fairly easy to avoid sand sharks. This wreckage near LifePod 17 highlights another excellent part of Subnautica's level design. Nearby almost all of the LifePods, there are wreckages which often hold a huge amount of fragments. Scanning 2 to 4 fragments will unlock a blueprint. Wrecks may also contain data boxes which have an entire blueprint, or PDAs which provide lore. LifePods act as an organic way to lead players into new biomes, and then placing wreckages nearby helps to feed the player a steady stream of new technology, much of which is essential for progressing with the story. Now that the formula of story pull, upgrades, resources and danger have been established, let's cover the rest of the biomes. A message from Officer Keen in LifePod 19 leads me to the Sparse Reef. Just like in the kelp forest and grassy plateau, there is a wreck nearby to provide me with upgrades. I got the vehicle upgrade console data box and moon pool and modification station fragments. There are new resources in the form of gel sacks, rubies and shale rocks to exploit. The Sparse Reef, as its name suggests, is sparsely populated in terms of both plants and animals, so doesn't have any real threats. It has tiger plants, but in reality these are more of a nuisance than a danger. Officer Keen's abandoned PDA in LifePod 19 provides me with the coordinates for dry land, located on the floating island. This acts as the same organic pull as a LifePod transmission. Instead of wrecks, the floating island has 3 abandoned bases to provide upgrades. PDAs reveal that these bases were built by survivors from the Degassi wreck, Paul and Bart Torgal and Marguerite Mader. This location provides the bulk of the Degassi storyline information. Bart Torgal's Log 3 contains information on the secondary storyline focused around the Carabacterium with this line.
We shouldn't have gone so deep. They do not want us down there.
This PDA shows that the level design is providing Feature 9, as it foreshadows the threats faced later in the primary and secondary storylines. The final PDA I find on the floating island continues the Degassi storyline by providing the proposed Degassi habitat 250 meter marker. The floating island doesn't have a great degree of danger. These creatures, called cave crawlers, harassed me but provide a minimal threat. The resources that are provided are also scarce but powerful. Growable crops in the form of marble melons, lantern fruit and Chinese potatoes can be found, as well as the Ultraglide Fins data box and fragments for the stasis rifle, multi-purpose room, small pots, and indoor and exterior grow beds. LifePod 13's transmission leads me to the mushroom forest. The nearest wreck to LifePod 13 is 360 meters away, which is something of an outlier among the LifePods with wrecks. Regardless, it provides some great technology in the form of the Cyclops thermal reactor data box, power cell charger, and power transmitter fragments. I was unable to fully explore this wreck as I didn't have a laser cutter. The resources of the mushroom forest are mainly lithium and sandstone rocks. The mushroom forest also has a high abundance of Cyclops fragments that are scattered across the biome and not tied to any particular wrecks, again marking the area as an outlier compared to most regions. The Jelly Shroom Caves are mainly located under the southern grassy plateau. I was led here by the previously mentioned Degassi proposed habitat 250 meter marker. Just like the floating island, the Jelly Shroom Caves has a Degassi base instead of wrecks, with the base providing all of the fragments. I found the water filtration machine and the thermal and nuclear reactor fragments. There are several PDAs, with Degassi Voice Log 6 deeper giving me the proposed habitat 500 meter marker. The Jelly Shroom Caves contain the new resource magnetite and also has shale rocks and large deposits of gold. There are 2 main threats in the Jelly Shroom Caves. The first is the crab snakes which live inside these giant pink mushrooms, and the second is the depth of the biome itself. At this point in the game, the sea moth is limited to 200 meters in depth, whilst the caves are almost entirely 200 meters or deeper. The sea moth is vital for protection from the crab snakes, but too long underneath the max depth will damage it. I almost lost mine. Shit, that was close. The mountain island is the only other land area in Subnautica. I came here when the Sunbeam radio messages told me to, and this is where the secondary storyline begins. When the Sunbeam attempts to land, it is shot down by what is revealed to be a planetary gun. Exploring the planetary gun reveals that I'm infected, that the planet is under quarantine, and that a precursor civilization once ruled this planet. The mountain island is home to several advanced fragments, including the purple tablet, Cyclops, and nuclear reactor fragments. Some of these are located on the island's beaches, and some just under the water. Resources on the mountain island are fairly abundant and useful. Inside the planetary gun, I find some ion cubes. In the caves, I find lithium and shale rocks, and under the water, I can find uraninite crystals. The mountain island is far more dangerous than the floating island. The island itself is fairly safe, with cave crawlers being little more than a nuisance. The water around the island is where the real danger lurks. Warpers patrol the northern and eastern side of the island, and a Reaper Leviathan sits in the deep eastern waters. This forces me to approach from the western side of the island to avoid confronting these highly aggressive predators. I don't like that. Fuck, that made me jump. Oh god. Life Pod 12 leads me to the bulb zone via the second part of the mushroom forest. Life Pod 12 itself gives me the repulsion cannon data box. The nearest bulb zone wreck is less than 50 meters away from Life Pod 12 and gives me the lightweight high capacity tank and Cyclops sonar scanner data boxes and stasis rifle fragments. The resources in the bulb zone are fairly numerous, with shale rocks, rubies, and large deposits of gold, lithium, and titanium being available. The bulb zone is teeming with predators, mainly the bone shark and the ampeel. I found the underwater islands on my way to Life Pod 2. The wreck provides a large amount of advanced fragments, including creature decoy, Cyclops fire suppression system, and swim charge fins data boxes, along with prawn suit propulsion, and grappling arm fragments. The underwater islands are rich in quartz and have limestone, sandstone, and shale rocks. The predatory life forms in the underwater islands are the bone sharks. The blood kelp biome is divided into two locations, similar to the mushroom forest. It has a small trench-like location in the southwest, near the sparse reef, but the majority of the biome is located in the northwest of the map. I was led here by Life Pod 2. There are no wrecks in the blood kelp zone, but Life Pod 2 has the Cyclops Mark 1 depth module data box. The blood kelp zone is home to two new resources, deep shrooms and blood oil. These are plentifully available in this area and essential for building endgame upgrades. The blood kelp zone is home to warpers, which we've already met, and crab squids. Crab squids are aggressive and can release EMP bursts which temporarily power down vehicles and equipment. The crash zone is located on the easternmost side of the map. I'm led here by the Aurora transmission to get the Neptune escape rocket blueprint and to repair the Aurora's drive core. This area, having multiple objectives, aligns with Feature 4. The Aurora does not have anything in the way of raw materials as it is a crashed spaceship, but contains a lot of fragments and upgrades. These include the Seamoth Depth Upgrade Mark 1, Prawn Suit fragments, and the Cyclops Efficiency Module Mark 1. The crash zone is dominated by several Reaper Leviathans, whilst the Aurora has cave crawlers at the wreck's entrance and bleeders in the submerged parts of the ship. The Grand Reef is the southernmost biome on the map. I'm brought here by the proposed Degassi habitat 500 meter marker. In my pathway to the Degassi base is a wreck, which provides me with the prawn suit grappling and drill arms, which are vital for traversing and gathering resources in the later biomes. The Degassi base has a Cyclops shield generator data box, which becomes useful towards the end of the game. The Grand Reef has a lot of resources. This includes gel sacks, diamonds, and uraninite crystals. The Degassi base contains several PDAs, which I'll summarise. After building the base, Bart figures out that the three of them are sick with an unknown bacteria, and he needs fish to study the disease. Marguerite kills a Leviathan and brings it back to the base, which leads to an argument between her and Paul. Bart leaves the habitat for some quiet, and whilst he is gone, another Leviathan attacks their base. Paul is knocked clear and likely drowns, and Marguerite is last seen fighting the Leviathan. The PDAs also give the location for the precursor disease research facility in the Lost River biome. The discovery of this Degassi base marks the end of the Degassi storyline. I returned to base to build the Cyclops Depth Module Mark I and the sonar upgrade. It was around this time that I began to run into material shortages and decided to cannibalize parts of my base. Keep this in mind as it'll come up later. I then travelled to the Lost River with the intention of finishing the game. There are several bits of lore to be found, including this ancient Leviathan skeleton, which aside from providing lore, is placed here to heighten tension. The Lost River is home to two new resources, crystalline sulfur and nickel ore, and contains several resources we've seen before, like ion cubes, rubies, and lithium, along with large copper, gold, nickel, and titanium deposits. There are two main dangers in the Lost River, the river prowlers, which ironically didn't give me much trouble, and the Ghost Leviathan juvenile, which did a fair amount of damage to my Cyclops. Once I'd gotten past the Ghost Leviathan juvenile, I made it to the disease research facility. After downloading the Carabacterium profile, my infection progresses to its end stage. This massively heightens the tension and urgency of finding a cure. I journey further and find the Tree Cove, which is the only area in the game with 0 hostile creatures. But I can't progress any further due to the depth limit on my Cyclops and Prawn suit. I attempt to find the materials to build the Cyclops Depth Module Mark II and Prawn Suit Depth Module Mark I, but I'm unable to build the latter without a moon pool and vehicle modification station. The Tree Cove has an abundance of resources. These include gel sacks, deep mushrooms, uraninite crystals, and large deposits of gold, titanium, and uraninite. With the Cyclops Depth Module Mark II, I decided to journey to and drop a beacon at the lava castle's entrance in the inactive lava zone. The main threat in the inactive lava zone are the sea dragons, which thankfully left me alone during my time here. Once I had finished, I returned to the surface in order to finish upgrading my Cyclops and Prawn suit. Once again, I had material problems, and not wanting to waste time as I felt under pressure to find a cure, I decided to cannibalize my base for further supplies. I travelled back down to the inactive lava zone and explored the power plant, getting the approximate location of the primary containment facility. The inactive lava zone is rich in resources and contains a new resource, kyanite. Kyanite mostly exists in large deposits, but small pieces can be found inside the lava castle. Large deposits of titanium and uraninite can be found outside of the lava castle. Inside the power plant itself, large ion cubes can be mined into smaller ion cubes. The primary containment facility is located in the lava lakes biome. The lava lakes is also a source of kyanite, but given that I already mined more than enough, I didn't take any from here. I reach the primary containment facility and meet the Sea Emperor, who reveals that the precursors imprisoned them here to try and force them to give up the secret to curing the Carabacterium. The Sea Emperor gives me the blueprint for the hatching enzymes which are needed to make the eggs hatch and create the cure. The plant hunt takes me to 4 of the game's biomes: the Sparse Reef, Mushroom Forest, Bulb Zone, and Blood Kelp Trench. The final plant was inside the Sea Emperor's pen at the primary containment facility. After getting the necessary plant samples, I returned to my base to build the hatching enzymes, only to remember that I'd cannibalized my base and had no fabrication station. I returned to my life pod to build the hatching enzymes and collected my prawn suit, which was on very low power as I hadn't put it in the moon pool whilst doing my plant hunt. I used the enzymes to hatch the Sea Emperor's eggs and then returned to the planetary gun through the teleporter and get cured. After getting my Cyclops back to my home base, I build the Neptune rocket. This forced me to address my lack of materials, which I do by farming, particularly titanium. After completing the rocket, I decided I wanted to make a decent time capsule to make up for my lack of preparation in the end game, so I made 6 ion batteries and loaded them into the time capsule. Once the time capsule was finished, I disabled the planetary gun, which marks the end of the secondary storyline. After that, I board the Neptune rocket for the final time and launch myself into space, escaping planet 4546b and concluding the primary storyline. What Subnautica gets right and wrong. In my opinion, Subnautica only gets one thing wrong, and that is the back and forth journeying at the end of the game. The tension has reached its climax with the Kara infection reaching its end stage, but that tension was really damaged by forcing me to return to my home base in order to build the necessary upgrades to actually finish the game. This could be countered by turning the Cyclops into a mobile base or with a lot of forward planning, but for a first time player or someone who hasn't played the game for many years, this isn't something they'll know. I did initially have a second criticism of Subnautica. There was no organic pull to the mountain, sea-treaded path and dune biomes. But then I was talking with a friend who's also a big Subnautica fan, and they said, "You're not meant to be led by the story. Exploring on your own terms is a part of the game." And that reminded me of something said by Michael Skelton.
We never really want to sort of handhold. We want players to feel lost sometimes, because I think when you feel lost, there's that greater sense of the unknown. And you know, like when you encounter something like one of these enormous like voids, like crevices in the world, and it's just like a vertical drop and it's dark, you know, it's intriguing and you don't know what you're going to find there because we haven't really said anything to the player. So it's up to them to discover what's down there.
This made me realise that the story of Subnautica is designed to act as a thematic framework for gameplay, nudging players forward without dictating their every move. This fits almost exactly with Feature 7, levels should increase player agency. Now I want to talk about the things that Subnautica gets right. Levels start small and get bigger and bigger. There are goals, complications and resolutions. Levels move the story forward. Levels have multiple or mini goals. Levels have bosses, although not all are bosses in the traditional sense. Players are able to get into the action of gameplay quickly. Levels increase player agency. Levels enhance the player by providing new technology and providing lore in the form of PDAs. And finally, levels have turning points and/or foreshadowing. But even beyond the level design, this game is absolutely phenomenal. The three storylines are incredibly well written and intertwined, with this rough timeline of major events on screen to demonstrate my point. The animals, plants, resources, music and lighting all come together to create an atmosphere that stands head and shoulders above other games. I don't think I've ever played a game that can go from wholesome and relaxing to absolutely terrifying in a heartbeat and have it feel natural. I'm not a big fan of horror games, but I can honestly say that Subnautica stands as the exception to that rule. Conclusion. It's for these reasons that I think anyone who wants a good example of what level design done right looks like should play Subnautica. It had an amazing creative team behind it who were able to create a genre-defining game which still stands strong today. Thank you for watching to the end. I want to give a special shout out to subscriber Mad Maxney, who scared the life out of me because I forgot I had stream notifications on whilst recording, and for letting me know that the sound of those stream notifications was broken and not picked up by OBS. But in all seriousness, I want to thank everyone who's subscribed in the last month and a half. I know I've dropped like 5 posts about it at this point, but truly, thank you all so much. To everyone who commented on my last video, the Minutemen Reimagined is currently in progress. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already to get notified when that video comes out, and once again, thanks for watching.